Okay, we're up to the Gemara on Chaf Zayin Amid Aleph. Chaf Zayin Amid Aleph, we're discussing the halachas of shofar, and it says, Upiv mitzupa zav. We said if the piv is covered with gold, then the shofar is puzzle, right? So where is that? For Tanya, Tzipu zav b'makam hanachas piv puzzle. So one place it says puzzle, and I think the Mishnah must have said that it's kasha, right? Rashi says shofar, the piv zav is kasha. Okay, so how's that possible? Says the Gemara, no problem. Shaloi b'makam nachas piv is kasha. Depends. B'makam, where you put your mouth, that will be puzzle. Where you don't put your mouth, that will be kasha. Amar Rabbi ki tanami mas nisan shaloi b'makam nachas piv tanan. I'm Mishnah speaking shaloi b'makam nachas piv. Now the big Torah over here is what does it mean shaloi b'makam nachas piv, and what exactly is the psul? So what does Rashi say? Upiv mitzupa zahav b'makam hanachas peh pasal shehatakiya b'zahav v'lei b'shayfa. That the key is going to come out from the zav and not from the shayfa. So it's not mashmitz a din of chatzitza. It's mashmitz just that the sound is going to be the sound of gold and not the sound of the shayfa. Other people learn that no, it's a chatzitza. When you go ahead and put it over there, it's a chatzitza, and therefore nafkamina would be. I'm saying, let's say you blow it like this, where, even if you're off the shayfa, it will be a problem, right? I don't know. It's Taisus on the Amid base says something. If you look at Taisus Amid base, Tzipo zav b'makam anachas peh, haynir lefarish the oivi hashayfa b'makam shemaniach piv, kari makam hanachas peh. If you guys look at the shayfa, let's look. This is the hole of the shayfa. Look, this is the hole of the shayfa where you're blowing into. So you're blowing this way, right? So the place where you would put your lips on the shofar, that's makos. But let's say I don't know, Benji, this is true. You don't put your mouth over the whole thing. You only cover a little part, right? A little part. So the part you put your mouth over of the shofar, that's hanachas piv. The little bit above it, right? That's shaloi b'makam hanachas piv. That's so interesting. In other words, you always learn shaloi b'makam hanachas piv. That's somewhere else on the shofar. No, it seems to be, according to Tosfos, it seems to be within the radius of the shofar of the hole. It seems to be the place where you put your lip, and a little bit above it is the place you don't put your lip. So that would be cautious. So it's amazing. You could have, if you put a little gold on the rim, if your lips go within the gold, meaning the gold's on the outside of your lips, it would be kosher. So that's the Torah over here. Back inside the Gemara. We said on Rosh Hashanah, in the Migdash, they had the shofar was in the middle and two chatzaitos were on the side. Fed the Gemara, betray kolim in mishname. Okay, how can you hear two kailos? In other words, you're blowing chatzos and you're blowing shofar. How can be yaitz in the midst of shofar? But Tanya, you don't hear two kailos at the same time. It says that zacha b'shama b'dibur echad nema. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said zacha b'shama in the same time. Mashena peh yichol l'daber, which is an impossibility for a human. Ve'ena oisin yichol l'shma. It's an impossibility for a human to say, and it's an impossibility for a human to hear. So how can you go ahead and hear two kailos? How can you yaitz a shofar? You can't hear shofar if you're listening to chatzaitos, and you can't hear chatzaitos if you're listening to shofar. So it says, l'kach marich b'shofar. Therefore, you go ahead and you are marich in the shofar. When you go ahead and you're blowing the shofar, you're going to go ahead and speak about, listen to it at length, because the chatzaitos are going to cut short, and you're going to be yoitza with the end sound, guys. You're not going to be yoitza. You don't hear the beginning of sounds because pashtas they're beginning to blow at the same time. But what do? When marich b'shofar, we go ahead and elongate the shkol of the shofar to be yoitza. It's a statement, the chishama soif tekiya, that when you hear the end of the tekiya, below techilas tekiya, without the beginning of the tekiya, yoitza. Because again, the beginning of the tekiya, you're not hearing. Why? Because two koilas can't be heard at the same time. Because therefore, the chatzaitos are mixed in. So what are you hearing? You're hearing at the end. If I hear at the end, it's considered like I listen to the beginning. Also, if you hear the beginning, right, you don't have to hear the end. Yatsa. Now, on that point, Toshma. Now, in the Beis Hamikdash, they blew a lot less. They blew Zechrenis, Machuyas, and Shayfrais, but they only blew one set. So they blew, let's say they would blow Tekiya, Trua, Tekiya. So that's one set of the Zechrenis. Malchuyos would be Tekiya, Trua, Tekiya. So now, on number one, you blew normally. Then you blew the Trua. But on number two of the first set, you were myrich that it should be counted as number 2 on the first set and number 1 on the next set. So the malchuyas to go into the shofar, the zechronis. What goes malchuyas, zechronis, shofars, right? So the malchuyas should go into the second malchuyas should be for the second malchuyas and for the first of the zechronis. So talk about birishayna. You blew normally the tekiah, then you blew a trua, umashach b'shniya, and then you went ahead and you elongated the second of the malchuyos that it should be not for the second malchuyos and the zechronos. Kishtayim ein biyadei ela achas. You only have one. Amai tisalik lu betarte. Why don't we count them as 2? Right? You're telling me the beginning and the end. Count them as 2. Count them as the last of the second of the first set and the first of the second set. Says we don't go ahead and divide it up. It's once you blow, it's you're blowing a long time, but we don't divide it up. Tashma, someone blows in a bar or a dus. The difference is whether one is surrounded by cement or not. Bar is in the ground. A dus is also in the ground. It has a wall around it or in it. Pitos is a big barrel. We're going to see on the Yomi base. The Rabbi High Goin says, this is speaking B'shas Hashmad. We're speaking in the time of the persecution of the Romans. So they were scared to go ahead and blow shofar. So what would they do? They would go inside in a bar or in a pit, or in this big barrel that they had, that they would go ahead and blow in order to avoid detection. Im kol shofar shama, if you hear the call of the shofar, yatsa. Im kol havara, but if you hear the voice of the echo, shama lo yatsa. Amai, why not? Leifuk betchilas tekiah mikami de la'arvev kola. Now, l'chayra, when you first blew, the chance didn't get an echo to get started, right? When you first blew, the first sound you're hearing is the natural sound of the shofar. The echo only comes about a split second afterwards. You just told me, just like you hear the end, it's like you hear the beginning. So too, you hear the beginning, it's like you hear the end. So l'chayra, I heard the beginning of in the barrel or in the bar or in the dus, and that should be enough because I should be yotza before the kol havara stops. Yeah, we see that the kol havara, it's no good. So in other words, we're questioning this whole concept, this teretz that you gave. You gave a teretz. What was your teretz? That it's speaking about what? We had a kasha, guys. Let's go to the kasha. Chatzoitzrus is going and you're blowing at the same time as the shofar. L'chayra, how can you hear 2 kailos? And for the Gemara, that's why they blew the shofar longer, because you can't hear 2 kailos. And Muddy, we ascertain from there, hearing at the end makes it like you heard in the beginning. For the Gemara, we got a problem with that. Right now, we're saying that you hear in the beginning, it's not like you hear at the end. Why? Because you are hearing in the pit and you're not hearing the end. At the end, it's going to be the echo, and nonetheless, you're not yotza. So back to the original question. How could you go ahead and blow a shofar and a tekiah, and you can't tell and a chatzaitzos, and you can't tell me the end is going to be like the beginning because you see from blowing in the pit, it's not like that. So back to the original question. Says the Gemara. Ella lashon charata tarti koilim ichad gavra loy mishtamai. 2 koilas from one person, like zacha b'shamar, you can't hear. Now, again, Kadosh Baruch Hu did something that none of us could do. He said 2 koilas at the same time. That you can't hear. Mitrei gavri mishtamai, but from 2 people you could hear. So we're doing away with the teretz that's why you were myrich in the shofar. At the beginning, even though this chatzoitz was blowing, simultaneously from 2 people, you could hear the shofar, and therefore you're yotza. And nothing to do with the end. Again, we did away with the end beginning from the case of the pit. We showed that what the echo apostles it, even though we heard the beginning. So very geschmack. Now you're blowing shofar, you're blowing the chatzotzos, 2 people. Trey color, like 2 people you can't hear. That's when it comes to the same person. That's 2 koilas you can't hear. But 1 koil, 2 koilas from 2 people that you could hear, therefore I'm yotza. Fred the Gemara. When we trade gavin mishtame, can you fact hear from 2 people? What Tanya? It says what? But Tanya b'toira echad koira ve'echad mitargim. Again, the old days they used to call you up to the Torah, and for those people who like to spend a lot of time in shul, they would even teach the pasuk. Every single pasuk they would teach. So you'd have 1 person reading and 1 person teaching. So what? But Tanya b'toira echad koira ve'echad mitargim muvad shelo yehi echad koira. The echad mitargim, right? Provided that what? That Right? So you should not have, they shouldn't be at the same time. In other words, you read one after the other, but they can't be at the same time. So if they're at the same time, so you see that two people at the same time, you're not Yaitza. You want to tie to that what? Chatzaitis and Shayf at the same time, you're Yaitza. So the should be Yaitza what? The Kriya and the Targum at the same time, but we see not. It says, Batanya b'Torah, Echad Korev, Echad b'Targum, Uvach le'eh Echad Korev Kishnayim. It says, Halegdamya el Seifa. It's only compared to the Seifa of that. What does it say in the Seifa? Halal Megillah, Afilu Asar Kairin. By Halal Megillah, even if 10 people are reading, you would be Yaitza. Alma Kivin the Chaviv Yehidaite. Since it's Chaviv, you're going to be able to listen and hear. Hachanami by Kir Sheifer, that's simultaneous with the Chatzaitzos rice. Kivin the Chaviv, since it's very, very dear, you'll have Daite V'Shama. You're going to go ahead and let Hersach you're going to go here very, very, very well. Rashi says, Yud Kailos, the Yud Kailos Yeshkan, Sheyef Shalehem with Samsim Diburam. It's not possible for 10 people saying Halal at the same time. It's not possible that they be simultaneously. And that's why we say, in other words, the Gemara there in Megillah is being machalik between two people who could go ahead and do a duet, and you can't hear at the same time, whereas 10 people can't do a duet. And therefore, since it's chaviv, you're going to listen to one person throughout. So too over here, by the chatzaitzos and the shayfa, you're going to listen to the person throughout. Harold, there's a reaction. You pushed a button there. I can't hear you. I still can't hear you.
How are they yotze? The mitzvah shofar.
There's no dinner chatzotzos. The chatzotzos is only on. There's no dinner chatzotzos. It's only on a tainus. So the mitzvah of the day is only with the shofar. You only care about the shofar. Chatzotzos is the halacha of the shofar. The chatzotzos were b'chinufya. They would get people together.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay. So now that's the question. So if you're telling me you're Yaitza from the beginning but throughout, why are you Ma'arich b'shayfa? Why do you do it at all? It says to make known that since you're blowing them simultaneously, you blow the shofar longer to establish and state that mitzvahs hayoim b'shayfa. But again, so what's the teretz? Guys, let's go. What was the kasha? Treish koilos nishma. You can't hear two koilos at the same time. Says the Gemara. You want to say from two different people, you could hear it at the same time. Says the Gemara. We asked the kasha on that from echad b'kaira. Is that echad metargem? Said the Gemara. That's two people, but it's 10 people, different koilos you could. And what's the vart? The vart is that since it's chaviv, when something is chaviv, you'll focus and be able to hear. So with the chatzos and the shofar, you're able to discern since they're different sounds, just like by the Yud guys, just like the 10 people reading. That can't be simultaneously. You can focus on one. So to the chatzaitis and the shofar, since they're separate sounds, and the mitzvah is chaviv, you can listen to the shofar. And why do you with the shofar at length? Is because the state that the mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah is b'shofar. Ubetainis b'shel scharim kfufim. Tainis, they use male. This is according to the Tanakama. They use rams that are bent. Upiv mitzupa kesef, and it was covered with kesef, not zav. Maishna Hasan the Zav, Maishna Hachad the Kesef. Why by Rosh Hashanah was it Zav? And here was Kesef. Ibayis aim a kol kinufya the Kesefu. Anytime you use it kinufya to gather people together, is with Kesef. Tichsiv asei lecha shtei chatzotzos Kesef. Make for you 2 chatzotzos Kesef. There's a mitzvah to make chatzotzos to gather the people. Ibayis aima haTorah chasal mamayin shal Yisrael. The Torah has rachmanis on the mamayin shal Yisrael. The Torah has rachmanis on the mamayin shal Yisrael. So it says the Mar Hasanami never the Kesef. Over there also, why don't you go ahead? You're worried about having your makbid. Now we have another person in a car. We have if you're makbid on the Mama Shel Yisrael, then why do we make the Rosh Hashanah Kesef also? Why are we making Zav? In other words, you're telling me now there's Akpada, right? You're telling me now there's Akpada. What's the Akpada? You don't want to go ahead and overspend. And that's why in Chatzotos, we covered with they were Kesef. So why are you making this Zav? Be cheap all around. It says, I feel covered Yantif Adiv. Covered Yantif is more. So the covered Yantif is to go ahead and use Zav. So Turiev is nice kasha. The chayra, we know on Yom Kippur there was a kalpi, there was a box, and they would put in the box. They put the lotteries to go ahead right and put on the Ser Hashem, Ser Azazel. So it's only for covered. Why do we make the box of wood? Why don't we make it out of zav? Right? Just like over here, you're doing the covered yontif. So to over there, you should do the covered Yom Kippur. Answer the Torah zav. That's only when it's the mitzvah itself. That's only the mitzvah over there is not the box. The box is ancillary to the mitzvah, right? But when it's the mitzvah itself, like the chatzotz rice or the shofar, then we'll use up. What Papa Bashmul Savar Lemevad Uvdu Kimid Asnisan. He wanted to do like the Mishnah with chatzotz rice. So Amalei they told Amrava Layamru Ela b'Migdash. That we blew chatzotz rice was only what in the Migdash, but outside we only use shofar. If you're wondering why we only use shofar, that's the reason. Tanya Namihachi Medom Amurim b'Migdash. When do we say that you have to blow chatzotz in a shofar? It's only in the Migdash. I will be gvul and outside the base of Migdash Makam Sheish chatzotz in shofar Makam. In shofar, in a place where there's chatzotz rice, meaning on a tinus, you can blow a shofar. Makom sheish shofar in chatzotz rice. In a place where you blew on a shofar like Rosh Hashanah, there was no chatzotz rice. V'chein hinig Reb Chalafta b'tzipurei Reb Chananya ben Tradin b'sachini to use. They went ahead and they used shofar and chatzotz rice. And these was it. This is after the churban, not by Sas churban. Ukishbada ve'etzel chachamim amru v'hoyin noyin kein ela b'shari mizrach b'harabayis b'uvad. Right? Only noyeg b'shar mizrach b'shar b'harabayis. Rashi says that's the same place. Other people say one is Ezus Nashim, one is speaking about the Shar Nikna. Amar Rav Avitem Rav Yeshua ben Levi. My crow. What's the pasuk? The siv achatzoisus we call shofar haril fnei hamelach Hashem. In other words, what's the reason that we only blow chatzotz in the shofar in the base of Mikdash? Why don't we blow chatzotz in the shofar outside the base of Mikdash? Because it says the name Melech Hashem. Melech Hashem who the bein chatzotz in front of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. We call shofar avo ba'alma, but not in front of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. When you're outside the base of Mikdash, ba'amaloi, then you don't need what chatzotz. What's considered L'fnei Hashem also is a question. Harabayis is that's L'fnei Hashem only, and that's Zara L'fnei Hashem. It's also Torah. Shavei b'Yovel Rosh Hashanah l'Tkiyah l'Brachos. She said that Yovel is equal to the last in the Mishnah. L'Tkiyah. The Brachos of Yehuda disagreed. He said only that not he would use a bent horn, not a straight horn, and he made the okay, but not linear Brachos. Omar. He said on Yovel straight. Yael. Amar Shumay Yitzchak. Kiman matzlin on idna. Zeh hayom tchilas masecha. Zichron liyam mishain. Who do we say when we daven on Rosh Hashanah? This is the beginning of your right. This is the beginning, right? Sorry. Zeh hayom tchilas masecha. Zichron liyam mishain. Kiman. Who do we go according to? Kreb Eliezer. Damar b'Tishrei nivra olam. And Tishrei, the world was what? Was created. So therefore, Zeh hayom techilas ma'asecha. So the Svarim speak out. Rosh Hashanah, really the world, according to Rabbi Eliezer, was created, as we spoke out, on Chav Hei Elul. 6 days later was Aleph Tishrei. Because the purpose of creation, Zeh hayom techilas ma'asecha, the purpose of creation is man. So we start counting it from then. Now, Masav Rav Eina Shava Yovel Rosh Hashanah L'Tkiyah U'Lebrachos. Now, Shema, you would say on Yom Kippur Zeh Hayom T'Chilas Masecha. For Ikah Zeh Hayom T'Chilas Masecha Zichron Yom Rishon the Rosh Hashanah Isha V'Yovel Lesa. There's no way you can say that on Yom Kippur, which is Yud. So it's more Kikatani Ashara. We're speaking about all the rest of the brachas, but what? But this bracha not. Rav Shisha Beit Avidi Masni Hachi. He learns the same Gemara in a different way. Amar Shmuel Yitzchak Chadit Nan Shava Hayovel Rosh Hashanah L'Tkiyah L'Brachos Keman the like Rebbe Eliezer. The Rebbe Eliezer Kivin Damar B'Tishrei Nivroilam Hekaz Zayam T'Chlis Masecha Zichron Yom Rishon. The Rosh Hashanah used to be Yovel Lesa. Says the same teretz Kikatani Ashara. So the very important places over here. Mashma, we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. We have a big machlokes Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya and Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkinus. We paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkinus was Shamuti. He was a Talmud of Shammai, and the halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer. So we saw early in the Masechta. We start counting from the Mabel. We start counting from that sugya. We go according to Rabbi Eliezer. There was places we go according to Rabbi Eliezer. So when exactly was the world created? How can you go ahead and possibly go ahead and say there is a machlokes in Mitzias? If Meir Asher was here, it's machlokes in Mitzias. Exactly when was the world created? Was it created in Tishrei or was it created in Nisan? So this is a very famous Taisus over here. Says Taisus, Kaman Matzlina, the third Taisus down. Kaman Matzlina Zahayam Tchilas Masecha Temo Hakaim Lon Rabbi Yeshua. We always pass like Rabbi Yeshua. So how can you say it's like Rabbi Eliezer? Kidaminam Parakama. Kufa, Rabbi Yeshua. When we go to Kufa, we count the Kufis, we count according to Rabbi Yeshua. The Kaimon Rav Eina. We could look like we hold like Rav Eina. The Parach Mishava Yovel Rav Eina Hachikama. In other words, based upon the dialogue of the Gemara, we're passing like Rav Eina. So it's not like Rav Eina passing like Rabbi Eliezer. We're passing like Rav Eina in the dialogue of the Gemara. But if you skip to the end of Taisus, 1, 2, 3, about 5 lines, 6 lines out. Amr ben Tam. The Elu Elu Divrei Kim Chayim. They're both correct. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer are correct. V'ikol Meimar, the Tishrei Ola b'machshava librois. It entered Hashem's mind in Tishrei to create the world. Nivra ad Nisan, but he didn't create, in fact, in Nisan. Uteravasi Ashken Perik Asar Pasin Gabi Adam Shol Machshava Librois Shenayim. He was going to create them as two. Nivra Ela Echad. Now, when it says it enters Hashem's mind, there's a few places in the Torah where it says it. This is one of them, that he was going to create them as two, and he created them as one. Because he says, in fact, he knew it was going to be two, but he created them as one, knowing that if they created them as one, they can come back together. There's Breishis Bar Kim Shemayim V'Sa'aretz. Breishis Bar Kim Midas Adin. Says Rashi, Olad Machshava Livreis Bedin, V'Rosh like Kaimoy, Mishtatef, and he was Mishtatef the Midas Arachim Bedin. It says Hashem Elikim. What does it mean, Olad Machshava? Like he changed his mind? Hashem doesn't change his mind. Hashem knows what's going to be. He doesn't have to see something to know what it's going to be. So what's the Hezbollah? The Hezbollah is that the Rabbi Shalom's Machshava is what Hashem wants. He knows it can't be, but he wants that. His Machshava creates a Mitzias. So Hashem's Machshava creates a Mitzias of Din. We know, in fact, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I spoke this out many times, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to function and be this Din. We shouldn't have to come on to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Rachmanis, which is a freebie, not undeserving. And in fact, there were tzaddikim that function midas hadin. Biggest rayas is the sugya in Chav Ches, Chav Tes Menachis by Rabbi Akiva. When Moshe saw that Rabbi Akiva was oil l'morim, when Moshe was oil l'morim, he found the Kodesh Baruch Hu going ahead and making tagin. He wanted to know what they were, and he said, "Asa, a person safe kamadiris, Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef Shemai, he's going to dash in tilin shalachas, piles of halachas on these tagin." So the Moshe Kodesh Baruch Hu Harayali, show him to me. So Moshe finds himself in the back of Rabbi Akiva's base medrash. He didn't know what was flying. And Shoma, one of the time he said, Rabbi min Alacha, where do you know this from? And he said, Allah Moshe Misinai. Moshe says, Nishash V'daita, I must have felt better. Moshe comes back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, Haresi like Torasai, Haresi Schara, you showed me his Torah, show me his Schar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Chayz La'acharav, turn around. He turns around and he sees that they're weighing Rabbi Akiva's flesh in the marketplaces of the butcher shops of Rome. Says the very famous line, Zu Torah v'zu Schara, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu shtoik, Kach Ola Machshava b'fanai. What is Ola Machshava? So it says, I think it's at St. Kachim, says, Kach Ola Machshava b'fanai, when I created the world. I created the world, the Shabim Midas said then. That didn't leave. That's a Metzias. The world is here. The Machshava is here. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva was tzaddikim and Kodesh Baruch Hu tzaddikim k'chut because they're not kind of going to the rachman of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. There only functioning with this din. So who did in this Taisvus, guys? When it says all the machshava to create the world and midas in Tishrei, like Rabbi Yeshua, and he only created the world in Nisan, there was a Metzias created in Tishrei. And Hashem's machshava, there's a Metzias created. So Elu Divrei Kim Chayim, they're both right. Even this Gemara could go according, Zeh Hayom Tchilas Masecha. Your machshava creates something. And even like Rabbi Yeshua, it could be what Rosh Hashanah comes out. Because it's fair to say that it only comes out like Rabbi Eliezer, since Rabbi Eliezer is Shamuti and the Lach is not like him. So it's a beautiful hezbah based upon, it's a very important place to know, guys, that Machloik is a Metzias. When was the world created? Can sign both. One was created machshava, one was created physically, and then it's very nice to hear. Okay, we're up to the Mishnah now on Chav Zayin and Beis, the bottom Mishnah. Shofar shenistak, a shofar that got cracked, the dovkoi, and you glued it together. So Ramban learns you heated it up till it melted. I guess that's like you soldered it. You soldered it together, right? You heated it up till what? Puzzle. It's puzzle. What's the psul over here? What's exactly speaking about? Says Rashi, Shoifa shenistak v'davkai v'devek, use glue. Shekorin glud puzzle. The havile kishnei shoifas. It's because it would be like two shoifas. It said shaifa. We said yesterday. Shaifa echad am rachmana v'lo shtei shoifas. That was one of the reasons you couldn't use the shor of a par because it's layered, gildy. We said. So too over here. Says Tosis is medayik and Rashi, when it says it's like two shayfos, it's mashma when it cracked in half, and you're putting it together. Says Rashi, says Tosis, shayfa shenistaku v'davku puzzle, perish b'kuntris, the havilek kishnei shayfos, mashma sheratzoleina shenistak legamri, shenechlak lebeis chatichos. It was two totally different pieces. Shem hayim achubim mitzad echad, because if it was what on one side. Right? Then it won't be two shayfais. V'tema, the nechal v'garmi hainu dovik shivei shayfais. That would be you connected two shayfais. We're going to see it. We're going to see a din in the Mishnah. Harold, give me a time. We're going to see a din in the Mishnah that if you take a bunch of pieces together and put them together, it's puzzle. So l'chayra, if it's speaking, it's two pieces according to Rashi. Why did the second din in the Mishnah add? L'chayra, it's the exact same din. What are you adding? So Tosis therefore says a different pshat. What says Tosis? So l'kach nira the nistach mitzad echad la'arkai. It got cracked down on one side. It's one side. Al pnei kulai ulefi she'ein shem shayfer alav. It doesn't have the same shayfer on it. The kol shkein davik shivei shayfers and kol shkein. If you put pieces together, elazuv ein tzarich laim lezuv. This and you didn't tell me this. Says Tosis a very lumdish teretz. We know from our trek through Shas, what happens if a metal kli becomes tamei? How do you get it? What ice tamei? You put it in a mikvah, right? Or right, sometimes you go ahead. If it loses its same kli by getting a hole in it, might see rimai, might see zayis, might see mashka, different levels depending upon what it's used for. Good. That would it then be. Good. You good? So now, it's very geshmak. Tosfos says, if it cracks on one side, you know what the psul is? Just like a kli loses the same kli, it loses the same shayfer. Rashi says it's like two shayfers. It's cracked in half and you put it together. For Tosfos, that's the same thing as putting a bunch of pieces together. And for Tosfos, it's two cases. One, it cracked on one side, and it loses the same shayfer, and you put it together. Zu, even this case, you don't even tell me that case where it's multiple cracks. Yes, Hesh, you had a question.
So there's no difference between widthwise or lengthwise, the crack?
Yes, there is a difference. That's why Taisa said l'arkai. There is a difference.
So widthwise, okay.
Hang in there because we're going to see it on the Yamid base. Shayfer shenustak v'davkei pasel. Dibek, next case. Dibek shivei shayfer is pasel. You put together broken pieces of a shayfer, it's pasel on the base. Nikiv, it gets a hole, the sasmai, and you close up the hole. If the hole would be ma'akav the kia, meaning it can't blow without you fixing up the hole, puzzle. Because if you fix up the hole, then it's the steamer that's giving not the shofar. Again, you're blowing in, it's not making a sound. You fill it up, it makes a sound. So therefore it's possible because it's that steamer that's making the shofar. But if it worked beforehand, and this steamer, guys, is just giving it a more solid, a clearer sound, since kol koilis shofars ksherim, then it would still be kasha. Again, if there's no sound coming out and you fill it up and now it works, it's no good because what's making the shofar? This steamer. Conversely, if it has a hole and it does work, and then you close it up and it works better, that would be kasha because the coil is also good. We just had this Gemara. Someone goes ahead and blows in a bar or a dus. Again, that's a bar that has something surrounding it. Or that's one pshat, or it's sometimes cement, maybe inside the bar. or in a big barrel. We spoke out for the people who joined. We spoke out of Haigoin. This Mishnah was learned, be made the shmad, where in order that they had to go ahead clandestinely to be yoitz in the mitzvah, so that we go in these places not to be caught, right, not to be detected. Im kol shayfa shama, if you heard the call of the shayfa yotza, then kol avara, but if you hear the echo, shama lo yotza, then you won't be yotza. We said on the Yom Aleph, right? Even in the beginning you hear, it's not enough. You have to hear a whole kol, this man. Someone's passing by back of Beis Knesses, the Shema called Shaifa or called Megillah, Im Kivan Liba Yaitza and Loiv Kivan Lo Yaitza. We're going to enter the sugya of mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. This is one of the main sugyas in Shas of the famous sugya of mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. We'll get into that Be'ez Hashem, but not today. After says Shama, is that Shama? One person listens, one hears, two people can hear, and one person can be Yaitza, another one not. Why? So Kivan Liba v'Zelo Kivan Liba. So Pashtas, you would say everyone holds by Shaifa, you need mitzvah tzrichas kavana, because you have two people hearing the same thing. One who was mechavan's yaitza, the other one wasn't mechavan, was not yaitza. Okay, getting back to the Shaifa cracking and getting back to Heshi Shaila about what does it mean, length or width. I told Heshi it's obviously the length, because the width, as we're going to see now, could be kasha. For example, Tan Rabbanan, Orach, if the Shaifa was long, the katzrai, and you cut it widthwise, and you made a smaller shayfa, kasha. We'll see, provided it has the share of a shayfa, which is a tefach. But if you do that, it'll be kasha. That answers your question, Harold. Gardoi, if you go ahead and scrape the shayfa, femidu al gildoi, and you leave one layer, kasha. Tzipu zav b'makam menachas peh, if you leave gold b'makam of leaving the mouth, pasel, shalai b'makam peh, kasha. Again, we said two pshatim, guys, right? Either we're speaking about exactly in the radius of the hole, speaking about the place where you put your mouth, and the same radius the place you don't put your mouth, or that whole piece would be considered a chatzitza, and therefore would have to be a little outside the shofar, on the outside. If you coat the shofar inside, it'll be pasal, because you're hearing the you're hearing the sound of zahav. You're not hearing the sound of a shofar. If you hear it on the outside, if it changes the coil, that it was pasal, then lav kasha. Nikiv v'sasmai, it has a hole in it. This is again the brayso, and you cover it up. Im akves atkiya pasal, then lav kasha. Thus in shayfa, but shayfa, you put one shofar in another shofar. Im kol pnimi shama, if you hear the inner one yatsa, and kol chitza and shama lo yatsa, then you won't be yatsa. Right? You won't be yatsa if you hear what the other one. Rashi, im kol chitza and shama lo yatsa. Because you have the mechitzais of the inside one that's being mafsed tekiya. So if you hear the outside one, that's why it's not good, because the inside one is being mafsed tekiya. So Rabbanan, gardoi, if you go ahead and you scrape it, maybe whether you scrape it from the inside or the outside, kasha. Gardoi v'midu al gildoi, mamish the last very thin kasha. Haniach shayfer mitach shayfer, and kol pnimi shama yatsa, and kol chitzin shama lo yatsa. Hafku v'tafku boy, right? Lo yatsa. If you go ahead and you go ahead and turn it around. Now it doesn't mean you make it upside down. It means that there's two things over here. You can go ahead, take the shofar, heat it up, and reverse it. In other words, go like this way, or you're taking the top part and making that small, and taking the bottom and making it wide. So hafach does not mean you turn the shofar over. Hafach means you're turning. Physically, you're changing the mitzias of the shofar. You're making the inside of the shofar the outside. Not even that. Even if you just go ahead, keep it in out, but you make outside, small hole, big hole. You make the big hole into a small hole, vice versa. It would not be good. That's what the Gemara is going to say. Not even like a shirt when you turn your shirt inside out. You made wider the short, and you made short the wide. My timer, what's the reason it's not good? It says varta kol shayfer, but derech havarasay beina. You need it should be derech havarasay. It has to be the way that it is grew, the way it grew on the ram. The way it grew on the ram, that's the way derech havarasay. That's the way it has to be. So if you go ahead and change that around, it's not going to work. Dibek shevei shayf is puzzle. You can put together a bunch of broken pieces is puzzle. Again, Tosfos learned zu vein tzarich lahem zu. Right, the first case where it cracked. First case where it cracked, puzzle. Okay, so again, if the shayf is broken along the side, like Tosfos, then it's puzzle because it loses shem shayfer. And so what if it loses? If that is puzzle when it's intact, but just one crack. So you have to tell me broken pieces put together. So it says Tosfos zu, the case where it's cracked them on. Vein tzarich lahem zu. That's a style in the Mishnah. Now, however, Tanabanan hoisiv alav kol shehu. Let's say you have a shayfer and you add on a little bit of shayfer. Bein b'mina bein shalai b'mina puzzle. Whether you add on a little bit of shayfer material or non-shayfer material, then it's going to be puzzle. It's going to be puzzle because it's like two shayfers. Niki v'sasmai, if it has a hole in it, and of a sasmai, you close it up. Bein b'mina bein shalai b'mina puzzle. Rav Nasanam b'mina kasha shalai b'mina puzzle. B'mina kasha, Rav Yochanan v'hush nishtaya rubai. You have to have roiv of a shayfer, meaning roiv. You stuff it up, but roiv of the shayfer has to be shayfer. Mechal shalai b'mina. If it's not non-shayfer material, afa pishin nishtaya rubai, even though you remain the majority of shayfer puzzle. Okay. They apply this then on the sefer. Shalai b'minay puzzle. If you stuff it up, shalai b'minay is puzzle. That's provided that you have the majority that is cracked. That the minay, even if the majority is cracked, it will be kasha. Okay. Then puzzle. In the shtan koilay mikamaishi puzzle. Then lav kasha. Nistak l'archay puzzle. If you go, it said, and it cracks the orchay, it's puzzle. Okay, again, it seems to be repetitious. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through we'll go through a bunch of halachas. I'll read it afterwards. This the orchay puzzle, the rachbai, the width. This is Heshi's question. In the shtaya by share tekiah, if you have the share of a shayfer that can make a tekiah kasher, love puzzle. The kama share tekiah, what exactly is the share of tekiah? Is pirish by Rishim Gamliel, kadesh yachzen biyadai, you hold it in one hand, v'yir lekan lekan. I think it's like a we had like a lulav. It's a tefach. If the sound of the shayfer was thin or thick, then what? Or tzror, or tzorod. I don't know what that is. Kasha. Shekola koilas ksherin b'shayfer. All the koilas are kasha b'shayfer. Any koil that it makes, no matter what, is kasha. Shachalei lavud ishmul kodchu v'taka b'yatza. If you make a hole in the shayfer, it's kasha. It says in Pshita, kulinami mitlu kodachol. Guys, mashma, you have to drill a hole to make a hole. If you ever see them make a shofar, it doesn't grow on the ram like that. They have to soften it up, they bend a little bit, and that part they make a hole in it. So, Fred the Gemara, what's your chiddush over here? Of course, you have to make a hole in it. And if the Gemara, you're cutting into the marrow. It seems to be on the goat or on the ram. The shofar is the outside material. The horn grows in, and the shofar is the outside material. You didn't go ahead and remove that. You cut off the whole thing. And now you have filled into the shofar, you have the zachrus, you have the horn, and you're drilling into the horn. You're drilling into the horn, not the outside shofar. So now that's the chiddush. You went ahead and you cut it, right? You the marrow, and you just drilled into it. So I might say min b'mina chaytzeitz that what, and you can't use it. Kimash malon that what, that it's not. Kimash malon that you could use it, it's not chaytzeitz. Okay, just to go over, there's so many, it seems to be repetitious and exactly a few halachas. It's just Shulchan Aruch Arachayim Siman Tavkut Peivav. Nistak Kulei L'Archay, if it's ripped on the whole side, shayfer that it's mitzad echad, even if you go ahead and heat it up, it's going to be puzzle like Tosfos, right? It's going to be puzzle. It loses its shem shayfer. That's so the mechaber passes like Tosfos. Nistak Kulei L'Archay, right? Majority, but not the whole thing. If you go ahead and use The devek, some people say, in other words, let's say you have a little crack, but it's not the majority, right? It's not the majority. There are those say that it's okay, even with glue, right? And there are those say that if you use glue, only you can't use glue. You have to go ahead and solder it. You have to put it in fire to go ahead. But that's nistak minority, not majority. Majority would be puzzle. Let's say a little bit l'archai. Nistak miyut hashoifer l'archai. Let's say the shofar is that. So the halacha is if you have a new shofar, if it's cut in according to its width. If you have a shofar, a tefach will be a kosher shofar. There's a hole in the shofar, and you don't close it up. If it makes the kol shofar, then it's kosher. If it has a hole and it's a different coil, Mechaber says it's kosher. Ramah says you should use a different shofar if possible. If it has a hole in it, you close up the hole. Listen, 3 tanoim. This is good. This is good. Niki v'sasma. It has a hole in it, and you close it up. Yesh aimim shekedei lachshiroi tzarich gimel tanoim. Three conditions to make it kosher. 1, sheyistemo b'minoi. Yeah, behind the bechaticha shayfer. 1, if it has a hole in it and you close it up, it has to be min b'minoi. 2, after you put it in, it has to return the color of the shayfer, like it was beforehand. And 3, you have to have the roiv without the nekev. The nekev does not take up the majority of the shofar; it takes up a minority. So those are 3 conditions: 1, min b'mino; 2, restore the sound; and 3, the hole can't take up the majority. B'shasad chak, if you can't find the shofar, you can be makel if you have 2 of those conditions: either min b'mino, or the same sound, or it doesn't take up ruba. Any one of those 2 out of 3 would do the job. Okay, if hafach as a shayfer is no good. If you make a hole in the zachrusa, it is good. It's not considered chatzitza. Let's say, okay, you put gold in the place of the peh. It's puzzle. So listen to this lashon. Yesh mefarshim shemakom zehu l'mayla mishofar b'makom shemaniach bayas pivlet sad penim. This is speaking on the top of the shofar, in the place where you put your mouth. Upasal veisha hevel koilo shel hatakei nichnas the zav. The breath goes into the zav. That was Rashi, but not into the shofar. And therefore, if you would cover it on the outside, it would be kosher. Since what? It doesn't change the coil. And others say, shehu b'tzarach hitzoyne shel shofar b'makom menachas piv al b'tapenim v'chol gavli pasal hoyel v'hu takei be'ezah. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what he's saying. It's Yeshim Farshim Shemakim Zehu L'Mayla B'Shayfar B'Makim Shemaniach Boyas Piv L'Tzad Pnim. It's above the shayfar where you put your mouth, but it's above. But in the place there, not. And the second pshat seems to be in that place. Okay, basically, we have no problem. We stay away from Zov. Don't put any gold on the shayfar. That would be the best thing to do. Okay. Wish everyone good Shabbos.
Wait, it doesn't make sense. I don't know how you can blow the shofar when it's in your mouth. I mean, it doesn't, it's all the way inside your mouth.
I don't think it's speaking about. I don't think it's speaking about like
it has
that.
to be talking about on the rim of the shofar,
Right,
right on
yes,
the rim.
Yes. Okay, so Bez Hashem, tomorrow night, I'll see what time after Leza. It'll probably be in the 8 o'clock range, between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, somewhere around there. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.
All right.